Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Recently, one of you guys asked us a great question in the comments section below, and yes, we might not answer all of your comments because it's pretty much impossible, but we do try to read almost every one of them, and every now and then when we see a really awesome question, we actually will make it into a video. Anyway, Zan Diego 86 asked us, what if Fives had told Anakin about the plot before he died? By plot, he means Order 66. Now, I love thought exercises like this because this question has so many different moving parts and possibilities. It just makes for a great video for us to kind of dive in and figure things out. So, let's do this. Let's start from the beginning. What exactly is Order 66 for those of us who've been living under a rock on Tatooine? Well, it's a secret protocol that is implanted in every clone fetus at a very early stage in their development, and it states the following. In the event of Jedi officers acting against the interests of the Republic, and after receiving specific orders verified as coming directly from the Supreme Commander, JAR commanders will remove these officers by lethal force, and command of the JAR will revert to the Supreme Commander until a new command structure is established. Now, Order 66 was a part of Palpatine's wider plan to eliminate the Jedi from the face of the galaxy. It was the accumulation of dozens and dozens of generations of Sith, following the rule of two, secretly gathering resources in the shadows to destroy their hated enemy, the Jedi. Now, Order 66 was a part of a wider collection of orders known as the Contingency Orders of the Grand Army of the Republic. Most people know about Order 66, but what they might not know is that there are 149 other orders a part of these contingency orders. Now, most likely these 149 contingency orders were created just in case the Jedi or Senate stumbled upon the contingency orders. It would be more than a little bit suspicious if there was only one contingency order and it was just directed at the Jedi. The rest of the orders cover a wide variety of emergency scenarios, and several of them involve removing or suspending the power of the other branches of the government. These other 149 orders will be more important later on in our video. But back to Order 66. The way Palpatine had hid the contingency orders from the rest of the galaxy was by having one of his proxies secretly arrange the installation of biochips into the clones. Only Palpatine and his proxy and a few of the higher level Kaminoans at the cloning facilities actually knew about these contingency orders. And even using advanced medical scanning devices, the biochip would appear as a small non-dangerous tumor or growth. It wasn't until 19 BBY and 13 years after the first clone was implanted with the biochip that one of these chips would actually fail. During a skirmish between JAR forces and Separatist forces on a space station over the world of Ringo Vinda, CT-5385 Tup experienced some neurological problems related to his biochip implant failing. This triggered Order 66 prematurely and caused Tup to walk up behind Jedi General Tiplar and fire his blaster point blank into the back of her head. The blue-on-blue incident alarmed the JAR, and Tup was immediately detained and brought back to Kamino for a checkup. Kaminoan doctors at first assumed the cause of the incident was due to some biological agent or virus and had Tup quarantined and examined. CT-5555, or Fives as he was known, a close friend to Tup, had accompanied his friend to Kamino and was also tested for some kind of biological contaminant. While under surveillance, Fives began to suspect that the Kaminoans were hiding something from the clones and their Jedi leaders. In an attempt to help his friend Tups, Fives, along with a medical droid, manages to find and pinpoint the location of the clone biochip. They assume it's a tumor and somehow affecting Tup's brain and immediately removes it. Tup unfortunately expires immediately after. Fives, more suspicious than ever of the Kaminoans, finds a biochip inside of his own brain, along with the brain of every clone ever created, and begins unraveling the wider conspiracy. Fives has his own chip removed from his head and finds his chip was healthy and still functional compared to the decaying one that they found in Tup's head. He is confronted by the Kaminoans and also Master Jedi Shakti, the lead Jedi in charge of the Kaminoan training facilities. Fives presents what he's found to both sides and manages to convince Shakti to send Fives to Coruscant for further testing and plead his case to the Supreme Chancellor. At this point, the Kaminoans are able to warn Chancellor Palpatine through back channels that Fives may be on the verge of discovering the true reason for the biochips and Order 66. On the way to Coruscant, one of the Kaminoans injects Fives with a mind-altering drug that makes Fives appear irrational and distressed. So when Fives approaches Palpatine about the biochip conspiracy on Coruscant, not only is the Chancellor fully prepared for the encounter, Fives is not exactly functioning at 100%. Palpatine asks the Kaminoans and Jedi to leave the chambers, leaving him alone with Fives. During their private exchange, Fives ends up attacking Palpatine's guards and then turns his blaster on the Chancellor. We don't really see what exactly we're talking about, but it can be assumed that Palpatine somehow reveals something to Fives, which causes him to react this way. Master Shakti Force pushes Fives out of the way, forcing the clone to flee, which effectively also ends the possibility of the conspiracy that now he only knows about from leaking to the rest of the Republic. Eventually, Fives contacts Captain Rex and Anakin Skywalker, but delusional from the drugs given to him by the Kaminoan scientists, he's unable to tell them about the conspiracy before clone shock troopers gun him down. So let's get back to the question. What if Fives had managed to impart his knowledge to Captain Rex and also Anakin Skywalker? What would have happened then? Well, first with Captain Rex, we know that he's one of the most loyal and obedient soldiers in the Republic, but by 19 BBY he's already seen his fair share of combat and a lot of his comrades die. He also had an encounter with a clone deserter during the Battle of Selakamai and had let the deserter go, supposedly because he understood and even agreed to some extent that the clones had been given a raw deal. While much more stable and obedient when compared to the Nolarchs or the clone commandos, Rex was still a very special clone trooper. Not only was he a terrific fighter, he also learned how to think outside the box thanks to his commanders Anakin Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano. The bond between these two Jedi commanders and Rex was also quite rare in the clone army. Ahsoka Tano and Anakin Skywalker have both risked their lives numerous times to save Captain Rex's. Most other Jedi and their clones had more professional and cold relationships. And I think Rex's time along with those Jedi in the 501st helped him change his view on the GAR and also help him fight his clone conditioning. At the end of the war, Captain Rex was one of the few clones who removed this chip. And I think immediately after finding out about the conspiracy from Fives, a clone he trusted and had known since the Rishi Moon incident, Rex would have immediately removed the chip from his brain and then probably instructed the 501st how to do so with their own. The procedure itself wasn't all that complicated and could be done with a pretty standard medical droid and only took a few minutes. Now what Anakin would do would be a lot more complicated. In Revenge of the Sith, the first person Anakin goes to when he finds out about Palpatine's secret identity as a Sith Lord was Master Mace Windu. This made sense at the time because Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi were both occupied on the battlefield. This time around, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda are both on Coruscant. Obi-Wan Kenobi specifically had suggested to Shakti to bring Tup to the Jedi Temple, where their own doctors could examine the clone with the Force. The medical scans at the time couldn't figure out what was going on with Tup, and Obi-Wan Kenobi thought maybe using the Force would help. I think Anakin would have gone to Obi-Wan Kenobi with the knowledge of the biochips first, who would then bring this up to Yoda and the Council. The Jedi at this point wouldn't know about Order 66 or the contingency plan, but they would know Palpatine and the Kaminoans were in cahoots and knew about this chip and were hiding it from the rest of the Republic. The fact that Tup had killed the Jedi General almost as if he were programmed to would be even more troubling. The first course of action that the Jedi would take would be to find a biochip, either by forcibly removing it from a clone or having a clone voluntarily give it to them. Remember, there were still many in the Jedi Order who still saw the clones as tools and not as real human beings. It's also possible that Captain Rex or another trusted clone would volunteer themselves. After all, they were also incentivized to get to the bottom of this as well. Eventually, the Jedi would be able to uncover all 150 contingency orders, including Order 66. But if you think about it, it's not all that suspicious. First of all, far more orders target the Chancellor himself than they do the Jedi Order. If we look at the root of Order 66, it was actually proposed by a Jedi Master by the name of Sifo Dyas. This is a safeguard in case some of the Jedi or multiple Jedi went to the dark side, something that the Jedi Order was rightfully afraid of. Just look at Anakin. The problem is, like many other things in the clone program, when Sifo Dyas was murdered by Darth Tyrannus' agents, much of the information about the program was lost. Now, the thing about this that doesn't really make sense is that the majority of these orders can only be carried out by other political and military officials, not just the Chancellor. Not all the orders can be triggered by the Chancellor himself. So the real problem is Palpatine and the Kaminoans are still hiding this biochip contingency orders from the very officials that are supposed to have power over them. This means that the only contingency orders that actually matter are the ones that the Chancellor can enact himself. This would definitely bring more attention and focus to Order 66, one of the few orders that only the Chancellor can start. Now, the most passive action that the Jedi could take would be bringing this information to the Senate. They would do this by releasing all of this information to a friendly senator like Padme Amidala of Naboo or Senator Bail Organa of Alderaan. From there, more research could be done and lead to an investigation which would be carried out by a special Senate committee, blah blah blah, and give Chancellor Palpatine plenty of time to react and then counterattack the Jedi. Whether that's by goading the Jedi into attacking him or carrying out Order 66 for some other fabricated reason, the language in Order 66 is very loose for interpretation. It simply states that the Chancellor can enact this order if the Jedi do anything that he deems is against the interests of the Republic. Anyway, the point is the Order 66 gate, or whatever it will be called, will be relatively serious but very confusing for most civilians and even people in the legislature to digest, and would take a lot of time in court and in discussion in the Senate for anything to actually happen. A more exciting assassination attempt by the Jedi, however, will easily capture the imagination of the citizens of the Republic and also dominate the political discussion and 24-hour news cycle. And if the Mueller report can teach us anything about Senate investigations, it's that it takes a long time. So bringing this case to the Senate would probably be the most responsible approach, but also the worst move for the Jedi Order to take because it would allow Palpatine to react. Now, the better option, of course, would be to use the contingency orders against Palpatine. The Jedi would only agree to this by first keeping this information internal so that they can conduct their own further investigations against Palpatine, who until then had not really been under that much scrutiny by the Jedi. Anakin would undoubtedly become a pawn in this investigation between the Jedi and Palpatine. And it's very possible that Palpatine, sensing that he's about to be discovered, tries to force the Jedi hand by making them arrest him. But the Jedi, instead of arresting Palpatine, would try to enact Order 65 or Order 5. Order 65 requires the Senate or Security Council to approve the removal of the Chancellor because he's no longer able to rule. The Senate approach would take quite a long time, I think, as we mentioned, but the Senate Security Council would be a much smaller group, and I think the deliberation there would be a bit faster. But the Jedi would have to move quick and build a very solid case to arrest Palpatine immediately. Removing his title of Chancellor would be important because it would remove his ability to call out Order 66. The second option would be Order 65, where the Chief of the Defense Staff would deem Chancellor Palpatine unfit to lead the GAR and would take over that responsibility from him. Now, the Chief of the Defense Staff position is most likely a political position or a military position. We're not really sure who the Chief of the Defense Staff is, but by giving that individual control of the GAR, it would effectively eliminate Palpatine's ability to call Order 66. Obviously, it's very important to screen whoever the Chief of the Defense Staff is and make sure that he won't just give power back to Palpatine. Most likely, upon finding out about the importance of Order 66, the Jedi would inform their generals across the galaxy and potentially even fortify the Jedi Temple. Depending on how much the Jedi decide to react to this, it could even affect the war effort, which could potentially be another reason for Palpatine to accuse the Jedi of treason and act out Order 66. Anyway, there are tons of different ways this could go. The more you talk about it, the more branches or, potential outcomes you have, which is why I kind of want to open up the floor to you guys in the comment section. But I'll leave you with this. I personally think it's safe to say that if Fives did manage to pass on his secret to Anakin, the Jedi would have a better understanding of what was going on, but it still doesn't mean that Palpatine's plan is completely ruined. He's obviously built some fail-safes into the contingency orders, which makes it very difficult for an outside force to penetrate. The discussion should also revolve around what exactly Palpatine said to Fives in the chamber where he basically frames him for an assassination attempt, and whether actually he talked about Order 66 specifically being used to wipe out the Jedi, or if he just mentioned implanting biochips into the clones. This would severely affect how much info Fives would be able to give to Anakin, and how much the Jedi Temple would actually know about the overall plot. Well, guys, I look forward to hearing your comments about this. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button down below, and as usual, thanks for joining us today. My name is Alan. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.